Hey everybody, welcome back to Teal House Farm. We are going to do a yummy home-cooked cast iron meal tonight, and I thought I would take you along for the ride because I've had some requests for more cast iron cooking and cast iron type recipes, and so let me show you the cast iron we're going to need for tonight and what we're making. We are going to use 3 pans tonight. We'll need our cast iron Dutch oven, which does have a lid. I gotta get the lid out. And we're going to need 2 of our 12-inch large cast iron skillets. The name of the game around here is always feed a lot of bellies, a nice balanced meal as cheaply as possible. So tonight we're going to be making a simple stew with some sourdough discard biscuits and a skillet cookie for dessert. Now we are going to use our home raised lamb for the stew. You can do the exact same recipe I'm about to show you and use beef. No problem, or you can actually use a chopped up pork roast, which would be a lot cheaper usually than buying beef if you don't want to spend the money on the beef. The important thing is there are 9 of us in our family and we're only going to use about a pound of meat. The majority of the stew is going to be filled in by vegetables to keep bellies full without really high costs, because meat is definitely what is most expensive and you honestly don't need very much meat in your diet to be healthy. So let's go ahead and we'll get everything going. We'll show you the recipes and just real simple down home cast iron cooking. First step is to start to prep the vegetables. So Ivy's gonna do that for me. She peels some carrots. We're gonna put the skins in the compost bucket. We're gonna use about half of a 1-pound bag of carrots for this recipe. She's gonna cut them into bite-sized pieces, put them in this bowl so that they're ready for us when we need them in a little bit. The meat today is lamb meat. This is stew meat from one of the lambs we raised last year. I have noticed when it comes to cooking lamb, and this is just me, but that if the piece is really fatty, that I need to cut off the extra fat because that's where that rammy flavor is in. It's in all the fat. So there's a couple chunks of the stew meat that are about half fat. So I grabbed some kitchen scissors and I'm just gonna cut those fatty pieces off. It makes a big difference in the final flavor. If you've grown up eating a lot of lamb, it probably doesn't bother you at all, but being somebody who did not grow up eating a lot of lamb, I like to cut off those fatty pieces. Okay, we're gonna add about a cup of flour to our lamb, some salt and pepper. We're gonna put the lid on this ice cream bucket and give it a big shake so all of our lamb pieces are nice and covered. We're also gonna need some onions today. So we've got some onions from our garden that are hanging over here, and we're gonna need a garlic bulb. Annie's trying to decide what color onions we should do today. She grabs the garlic for me. It really doesn't matter for this recipe what color onions you use. For the garlic, we're going to use about half of this small bulb, so that's like 4 cloves of garlic. I love using fresh garlic from our garden, but I'll also be honest, having the minced garlic all ready to go in the fridge is really nice because it is kind of a pain, especially when it's one of these smaller bulbs, having to peel them and then dice them. I don't have a garlic crusher. I don't even know what that tool is called, but I do it by hand, so this is kind of a pain, but we get it done. Annie decided on the purple onions today, so we go ahead and get some small ones peeled. Notice the small ones go bad a lot faster than the bigger ones, so we tend to eat our small bulbs up first and work our way to the bigger ones through the winter. We're gonna add our garlic to the skillet. This is an 8-quart Dutch oven, and we're also going to add our lamb meat. The skillet is also already really greasy, so I didn't add any grease at this point. Ivy's moved on to working on potatoes, same thing, peeling them, cutting them into chunks, and we're just searing the meat. We're not cooking it all the way through, so it's just a couple minutes with a couple stirs, and then we're gonna go ahead and remove it from the Dutch oven and just put it aside for later. Now we are gonna add more grease since the lamb sucked a lot of it up. This is beef grease that I saved the last time I browned some ground beef for tacos, so we're gonna cut off a chunk of that, melt it down, add our onions, give them a little stir, add our carrots and potatoes, give them a little stir. We're also going to use 2 quarts of our homemade beef broth and 2 bay leaves. Add a little extra salt and some pepper for a little extra flavoring. And then we're gonna add back in our beef that we had browned. And now we just get to let the magic do its job. This is a pretty low intensity cook. Decide to add a little thyme. You don't have to, but it does add a nice little punch to the stew. So Ivy puts a couple pinches in. And then I had warmed the lid in the oven just so that it was warm like the pot, and stuck that on, and we're going to simmer it for probably close to an hour. Just let it cook. It's a stew, we're not in a hurry. Compost bucket goes outside, and then Goobs and I get started on making some sourdough discard biscuits. This is a new recipe and it did not work very well, so I'm not even gonna share the recipe. We tried a new one, didn't like it. The biscuits were flat like hockey pucks. If you want a great biscuit recipe, Hillbilly Kitchen, she has a wonderful YouTube channel. She has a buttermilk biscuit recipe that is the best, and I will just go back to using that one because those sourdough biscuits were no good. Our stew is looking great. We're gonna give it a stir, gonna turn down the heat a little bit, and I'm also going to add just a little bit of cornstarch and water to thicken it up. Last up, we're gonna go ahead and make some dessert. So we're going to make a cast iron skillet cookie. It lets us just cook a cookie in one big cookie mess in one cast iron skillet, which is nice instead of having to make all the little individual cookies. So it's a little bit faster for me, especially when you have a larger family and you probably need to do a double batch of cookies if you did individual cookies. The recipe is really simple. It's 8 tablespoons of softened butter, a half cup of sugar, a half cup of brown sugar, an egg, a teaspoon of vanilla, 1.5 cups of flour, and 1 teaspoon each of baking soda and salt, plus as many chocolate chips as you want to put in there. I'll link the recipe below, but it's pretty similar to a basic cookie recipe. Basically, it's your cookie recipe off the back of the bag, but we're using a little bit less flour and sugar so that the dough is more pliable. We're going to put it in our skillet, and the skillet goes in the oven on 350 for about 20 minutes or until the cookie's nice and brown. The kids fight over licking the cookie bowl, and then everything is ready. Go ahead and give everybody some watermelon, some stew. We ate the biscuits even though they were flat, they still tasted pretty good. And now we're gonna make dinner for the baby. She doesn't have any teeth yet, so everything she gets pretty mashed up. So I just take some vegetables out of the stew and whisk them with a fork, cool them off with an ice cube, and then that's what she gets. I did baby-led weaning with a couple kids. I've done purees with a couple kids. I really don't have a preferred method for feeding a baby. Just feed the baby. And I like feeding them things we eat so that they learn to like the same flavors that we eat, so I feel like it makes them less picky when they get older. Our cookie is done, so we're gonna have some dessert. I found this real cool birthday cake ice cream at the store. It's got sprinkles mixed in. The kids thought that was pretty cool. And that's the best ending to a busy day. Some home cooking and some ice cream and cookies is all a little boy needs to be happy. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.